Owner spots his cat bundle a trash bag, stops cold when looked inside. Eric hated Sundays. They were supposed to be relaxing, a brief respite before another grueling week at the advertising agency. But lately, they had become nothing more than reminders of everything wrong in his life. The empty apartment. The unanswered texts. The deafening silence where his mother's weekly calls used to be. Today was different, though. Today, he had finally decided to tackle the mountain of boxes and forgotten belongings that had slowly colonized his storage room over the past 5 years. Marie Kondo would have a heart attack if she saw this mess, he thought, lifting yet another dusty cardboard box. Luna, his gray tabby cat, watched from the doorway with typical feline judgment. She had been his constant companion since the day he found her shivering behind a dumpster 3 years ago. Sometimes he wondered if she had actually found him instead. "Don't give me that look," Eric muttered, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Some of us can't just sleep 16 hours a day and expect things to sort themselves out." Luna's response was to saunter into the room and immediately start pawing at a crumpled black trash bag tucked behind an old guitar case. Eric sighed. Everything was a toy to her. "Leave it alone, Luna. That's probably just..." He stopped mid-sentence as the bag shifted, revealing something white underneath. Not trash then. Curious despite his exhaustion, Eric reached for the bag. It was lighter than he expected, and when he pulled it open, a single envelope fluttered to the floor. Luna immediately pounced on it, batting it across the wooden floorboards. "Hey, cut that out!" Eric snatched the envelope before Luna could start her favorite game of shred everything in sight. His irritation vanished the moment he saw the handwriting on the front. "Mom." The room suddenly felt too small, too warm. He knew that elegant script anywhere, the way she always wrote his name with a flourish on the C, how she dotted her I's with tiny circles instead of points. Little artistic touches that had once made even grocery lists look special. But what caught his attention wasn't the handwriting itself. It was the date scrawled in the corner, March 15th, 2019. 6 years ago. Eric sank to the floor, his cleaning forgotten. This didn't make sense. 6 years ago, everything had been normal. Their weekly dinners. The long phone calls about nothing in particular. The way she'd still send him newspaper clippings of articles she thought he'd find interesting, even though he kept telling her he could just read news online. Their relationship hadn't imploded until 2 years ago, after that disastrous Thanksgiving dinner. The argument that had started about something trivial, his career choices, or was it about him still being single, and had somehow escalated into decades of unspoken resentments spilling out like wine on white carpet. She had said things. He had said worse things. And then, silence. 2 years of birthdays marked only by formal cards with gift cards tucked inside. 2 years of holidays spent with friends instead of family. 2 years of walking past her favorite restaurant and wondering if she still went there every Thursday for their chocolate soufflé. So why was there a letter from 6 years ago, hidden in his storage room? And more importantly, how had he never seen it before? Luna rubbed against his leg, purring loudly. She had always had an uncanny ability to sense when he was upset. Eric scratched behind her ears absently, still staring at the envelope. The paper was slightly yellowed at the edges, but otherwise intact. It had never been opened. The seal was still perfect, waiting all these years to be broken. Eric's hands trembled slightly as he turned the envelope over. There was something else written on the back, in smaller letters. "When you're ready to understand." Ready to understand what? His mother had always had a flair for the dramatic. It was where he got his own theatrical tendencies from, though he'd never admit it. But this felt different. The handwriting, usually so precise and controlled, seemed shaky. Emotional. As if she'd written it in a hurry, or while crying. He glanced at his phone. 3:47 p.m. On a normal Sunday 2 years ago, this would have been around the time she'd call to catch up. He'd be telling her about his latest work project, she'd be updating him about the neighborhood gossip, and they'd both pretend not to notice how carefully they avoided certain topics. The urge to call her now was overwhelming. To demand answers about this mysterious letter, and its cryptic message. But 2 years of silence felt like an ocean between them, and he wasn't sure he knew how to swim anymore. Luna headbutted his hand, nearly causing him to drop the envelope. He looked down at her, remembering something his mother once said about cats. "They see things we don't, dear. The Japanese believe they can walk between worlds. Maybe they know secrets we're not ready for." At the time, he had laughed it off as another one of her superstitions. Now, watching Luna stare intently at the letter in his hands, he wondered if she had been right. With a deep breath, Eric broke the seal. The paper inside was folded precisely, 3 careful creases forming perfect thirds. His mother's attention to detail, even in something meant to be hidden away. As he unfolded the letter, something small fell out, a photograph, worn at the corners. He picked it up, and his heart stopped. It was a picture he had never seen before, but the subjects were immediately recognizable. His mother, much younger, standing in front of a building he didn't recognize. She was smiling, but her eyes held something he had never noticed in any other family photo: fear. And next to her, with his arm around her shoulders, stood a man Eric had only seen in his earliest childhood memories. A man his mother had told him died when Eric was 3 years old. His father. The date stamp in the corner of the photograph read July 1995, 2 years after his father's supposed death. Eric's hands were shaking so badly now that Luna stopped her purring and looked up at him with concern. The room felt like it was spinning, the walls closing in with the weight of this impossible revelation. With his heart pounding in his ears, he turned his attention to the letter itself, his mother's familiar handwriting now seeming like the writing of a stranger. "My dearest Eric," it began. "By the time you read this, you'll probably hate me. And you'll have every right to." Eric's hands trembled as he began reading the letter, each word feeling like a stone dropping into the pit of his stomach. "My dearest Eric, by the time you read this, you'll probably hate me. And you'll have every right to. I've carried this secret for so long that it's become part of me, like a second skin I can't shed. But secrets have a way of poisoning everything they touch, and I can't bear to watch it poison what's left of our relationship. The photo you're holding wasn't supposed to exist. I burned all the others, every trace, every reminder. But this one I couldn't destroy. Maybe I kept it as punishment, or maybe as proof that I wasn't crazy, that it all really happened. That your father really was there that day in 1995, very much alive, when I had told you he was dead. You deserve the truth, even if it breaks both our hearts. Your father didn't die in that car accident when you were 3. That was the story I created, the lie I told everyone, including you. The truth is much uglier, much more complicated. He left us, yes, but not the way you think. Do you remember those strange men who used to visit our house late at night when you were very young? The ones I told you were business associates of your father's? They weren't businessmen, Eric. They were federal agents. Your father was involved in something dangerous. I never knew the full extent of it, and maybe that was intentional on his part. But I knew enough to be terrified. The night he died, he came to me with a choice: either we could enter witness protection with him, leaving behind everything and everyone we knew, or he would disappear alone to keep us safe. I chose to stay. I chose stability for you over a life on the run. I chose to let you believe your father was dead rather than have you grow up looking over your shoulder. Was it the right choice? I've asked myself that question every day for the past 27 years. But here's the part that will hurt the most. 2 years after he died, he came back. That's when that photo was taken. He wanted to take us with him, said he'd figured everything out, that we'd be safe. I refused again. And every few years after that, he would find a way to contact me, to check on you from afar. The last time was 6 years ago, the day I wrote this letter. He showed up at my door, older, grayer, but with the same eyes, your eyes. He told me everything had been resolved, that he was finally free to come home. He showed me newspapers articles about the arrests of his old associates, about sealed court documents being opened. He begged me to tell you the truth. I said no. I told myself I was protecting you. That you had built a life without him, that bringing him back would only cause pain. But the truth is, I was protecting myself. I was afraid you would hate me for lying, afraid you would choose him over me, afraid of losing the relationship we had built on a foundation of lies. The photo he left that day is the one you're holding now. He said it would help you understand when the time came. I've spent 6 years trying to find the courage to give you this letter, to tell you that your father is alive and wants to know you. 6 years of watching you build your life, achieve your dreams, all while carrying this burden. But I'm a coward, Eric. Even writing this letter, I'm not sure I'll ever have the strength to give it to you. How do you tell your son that his entire life has been built on a lie? That every time you told stories about his father's bravery, about the accident that took him too soon, you were weaving a web of deception? Your father lives in Portland now. He owns a bookstore, can you believe it? All those bedtime stories he used to read to you, maybe they were his dream all along. He's been following your career, keeping tabs on you from afar. He has a whole folder of newspaper clippings about your advertising campaigns. He's proud of you, even though he has no right to be. I'm enclosing his contact information on a separate piece of paper. What you do with it is your choice. You might want to know him, to understand why he made the choices he did. Or you might want to burn this letter and continue believing the story I told you all those years ago. Either way, the choice is yours now, the kind of choice I never gave you before. There's so much more to tell you, so many details and explanations that this letter can't contain. But perhaps those are conversations we need to have in person, if you're willing to hear them. I know this revelation might end whatever relationship we have left. I know you might never forgive me for maintaining this lie for so long. But please understand that every choice I made, right or wrong, came from a place of love, a desperate, perhaps misguided love, but love nonetheless. Your father asked me to tell you one more thing. He's sorry he missed your 10th birthday party. Apparently, he was there, watching from across the street as you played with your friends in the backyard. You were wearing that Superman cape I made you, pretending you could fly. He said it broke his heart that he couldn't join in, couldn't scoop you up and make you soar like he used to. I'm sorry, my dear boy. Sorry for the lies, sorry for the choices I made for you, sorry for the relationship you never got to have with your father. But most of all, I'm sorry for not being brave enough to tell you this in person. Love always. Mom. Eric stared at the final words until they blurred together. The separate piece of paper with his father's contact information wasn't there, either lost or never included in the first place. Luna had curled up in his lap, her warmth the only thing anchoring him to reality. He looked at the photograph again, studying his father's face more carefully. The same slightly crooked smile he saw in his own mirror every morning. The same habit of tilting his head slightly to the left when posing for photos. How many other mannerisms had he inherited from this ghost, this man who had been watching his life from the shadows? His phone felt heavy in his pocket. His mother's number was still there, unchanged despite 2 years of silence. But what would he even say? Hey Mom, my cat found your secret letter about Dad being alive. Want to grab coffee and chat about 27 years of lies? The sound of a car door slamming outside made him jump. Through the window, he could see his neighbor Mike getting out of his car, carrying groceries. Such a normal Sunday afternoon activity, while Eric's entire world was being rewritten in his storage room. He looked back at the letter, at the date that now felt like a ticking bomb, March 15th, 2019. 6 years ago. Which meant his father had been free, had been waiting to reconnect, for all that time. Through Eric's promotions, his breakups, his achievements and failures. Through the fight with his mother, and the 2 years of silence that followed. How many times had he walked past a bookstore in Portland during business trips, never knowing his father might be inside? The letter raised more questions than it answered, and somewhere in Portland, a man with Eric's smile was organizing books, perhaps waiting for a son who never knew to look for him. 6 hours had passed since Luna discovered the letter, and Eric's storage room had transformed into something resembling a conspiracy theorist's den. Old photo albums lay scattered across the floor, their contents spread out like evidence at a crime scene. His laptop balanced precariously on a stack of boxes, multiple tabs open to newspaper archives from the mid-1990s. Luna watched from her perch atop the highest bookshelf as Eric paced, running his hands through his hair for the 100th time. The sun had set, casting long shadows through the window, but he hadn't bothered to turn on the lights. The blue glow from his laptop screen illuminated his face, making him look ghostly. "It doesn't make sense," he muttered, picking up the photograph again. He'd been analyzing it like a detective, noting every detail: the building in the background, a cafe called The Daily Grind, his mother's outfit, a blue dress he'd never seen before, the newspaper tucked under his father's arm, dated July 15, 1995. But something was off. Eric pulled up a digital copy of his baby album on his laptop. There it was, a family photo from July 1995, showing him and his mother at his cousin Sarah's birthday party. His mother was wearing a cast on her right arm, which she'd broken gardening earlier that month. Yet in the newly discovered photo, allegedly from the same month, there was no cast. "Mom," he whispered, "what are you not telling me?" He grabbed his phone and opened Google Maps, typing in The Daily Grind Cafe 1995. Nothing came up. He tried variations, adding different cities, but the search led nowhere. It was as if the cafe had never existed. A notification popped up on his phone, a reminder about tomorrow's client meeting at 9 a.m. The real world still turned, apparently, even when your personal life imploded. He was about to dismiss it when he noticed the date, January 30th, 2025. January 30th. Something clicked in his mind. He scrambled through the pile of albums until he found what he was looking for: his father's death certificate. Or rather, the document his mother had always told him was his father's death certificate, stored in a manila envelope he never actually opened. His hands shook as he pulled out the paper. The first thing he noticed was that it wasn't a death certificate at all, but a life insurance policy. The date of issue, January 30th, 1995. The beneficiary, Eric Thompson, to be paid out on his 21st birthday. Eric's blood ran cold. He'd received that money, a substantial sum that had helped him through college. His mother had said it was his father's life insurance payout, finally processed after years of bureaucratic delays. But the document in his hands told a different story. This wasn't a payout from a tragic accident. This was planned, predetermined, set up months before his father's supposed death. "Jesus," Eric breathed, feeling sick. Luna jumped down from her perch and patted over, sensing his distress. She nudged his hand, purring softly. The sound of his phone ringing made them both jump. Unknown number, Portland area code. Eric's heart stopped. He stared at the screen until it went dark, the call going to voicemail. Seconds later, a text message appeared. "I know you found the letter. We need to talk. Dad." The phone slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor. Luna darted under a nearby chair, startled by the noise. How could his father know about the letter? Unless... Eric rushed to the window, pulling back the curtain. The street below was empty except for a dark sedan parked across the road, a car he'd never seen in the neighborhood before. As he watched, the car's headlights flashed once, twice, 3 times. A memory surfaced, so old he'd almost forgotten it, sitting on the front porch as a child, counting his father's headlight flashes. 1, 2, 3. Their secret code, his father had called it. Their special way of saying, "I love you," when words weren't enough. The ground seemed to tilt beneath his feet. He stumbled back from the window, his mind racing. His father wasn't just alive, he was here, now, watching Eric's apartment. Had he been watching all along? With trembling fingers, Eric opened his laptop and did something he'd been avoiding for hours. He searched his own name. News articles about his advertising campaigns popped up, just as his mother's letter had mentioned. But there was something else, comments on the articles, all from the same username, BookmanPDX. Each comment was innocuous enough: congratulations on the campaigns, praise for the creative concepts. But looking at them now, Eric saw the pattern. the username, the references to books and reading. His father, the bookstore owner, leaving digital breadcrumbs. A new text message lit up his phone. The cafe wasn't in Portland. Your mother took that photo in Vancouver. We had to meet across the border, safer that way. Check your email, son. I just sent you something you need to see. Eric's email app showed one new message from an address he didn't recognize. The subject line: What really happened that night? Attached was a video file, dated the night of his father's supposed death. Luna meowed softly, rubbing against his leg. Outside, the sedan's engine started up, its headlights flashing one final time before pulling away from the curb. Eric looked at his phone, then at his laptop, then at the pile of evidence surrounding him. The life insurance policy that predicted its own necessity. The photograph that defied timeline and location. The father who had apparently been hiding in plain sight, leaving clues in comment sections and secret codes in headlight flashes. And now, a video that promised to reveal everything. His cursor hovered over the email attachment. One click would show him the truth about that night. The night that had shaped his entire life. The night his mother had turned into a carefully constructed lie. But something made him hesitate. The timing was too perfect. The sudden appearance of his father, the convenient discovery of the letter, the video arriving exactly when he was diving into the past. He thought about his mother's letter again, about federal agents and witness protection. About choices made to keep people safe. What if this wasn't about uncovering the truth? What if this was about something else entirely? Something still dangerous enough to require such elaborate deceptions? The video file waited, innocent and ominous at the same time. Behind him, Luna knocked over a stack of photos, scattering them across the floor. One slid to a stop at his feet, a childhood picture of him and his mother at a park. She was looking over her shoulder, her expression anxious even as she smiled for the camera. Even then, Eric realized she had been watching for something. Or someone. The question was, who was really doing the watching now? Eric didn't sleep that night. How could he, with the video file sitting unopened in his inbox like a digital Pandora's box? Instead, he did something that would have made his advertising colleagues proud. He created a timeline. The living room wall became his canvas, sticky notes, and string connecting events like a detective's board. Luna watched from the couch, occasionally batting at dangling pieces of string, as Eric pieced together the puzzle of his past. 1995, the year everything supposedly ended. His father's death. The life insurance policy. The mysterious photo in Vancouver. 2019, the letter. His father's alleged freedom. The beginning of his mother's guilt. 2023, the Thanksgiving fight that ended his relationship with his mother. 2025, now. The revelation. The watching car. The video. But as he stepped back to look at the whole picture, something else emerged, a pattern he hadn't noticed before. Every major career move he'd made, every significant change in his life, had been followed by a mysterious helping hand. The scholarship to his dream college that appeared out of nowhere. The lucky break that landed him his first advertising job. The anonymous tip that saved his biggest campaign from disaster. With trembling fingers, Eric opened his laptop and logged into his old email account. He scrolled through years of correspondence until he found it, the scholarship notification email. The sender's address caught his eye, grants@newleaf.com. New Leaf. Like turning over a new leaf. Like starting a new chapter. Like a bookstore. Eric whispered. Luna's ears perked up at his tone. He grabbed his phone and searched for bookstores in Portland with Leaf in the name. 3 results popped up. 2 were chains. But the third, New Leaf Books and Cafe, had opened 6 years ago. The same year his father had allegedly gained his freedom. Eric clicked through to the store's website. The About Us page showed a cozy interior with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, but no photos of the owner. The address was on a quiet street in downtown Portland, and the store's logo was a simple design, a book opening to reveal a leaf inside. Something about the leaf bothered him. He'd seen it before. Eric rushed to his bedroom and pulled open his desk drawer, retrieving a small wooden box he'd had since childhood. Inside was a collection of what he'd always thought were random trinkets: a carved wooden leaf, a small compass, a foreign coin, a blue marble. His father had given him the box on his 3rd birthday, just months before his death. He'd called it a treasure box, said each item had a story that Eric would understand when he was older. The carved leaf matched the bookstore's logo perfectly. "It was never random," Eric said aloud, his voice shaking. "He was leaving me a trail of breadcrumbs my entire life." His phone buzzed with another text from the Portland number. "The video will explain everything. But you need to watch it before midnight. Some doors only stay open so long, son." Eric glanced at the clock, 9:47 p.m. Just over 2 hours left. But something still didn't add up. He returned to his timeline on the wall, focusing on 2023, the year of the Thanksgiving fight with his mother. They'd argued about his career, about him being single, but what had started it? He closed his eyes, forcing himself to remember that night. His mother had been acting strange even before dinner, jumping at every car that passed by. And then he'd mentioned his upcoming business trip to Vancouver. Eric's eyes snapped open. Vancouver. Where the mysterious photo had been taken. Where his father had met his mother in secret. He'd pulled up his work calendar from 2023 and found the Vancouver trip. The client had been a small but growing bookstore chain looking to expand their brand. A chain that had unexpectedly pulled out of negotiations the day after his fight with his mother. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture he wasn't sure he wanted to see. His father hadn't just been watching from afar, he'd been orchestrating events, manipulating Eric's life from the shadows. The scholarship, the job opportunities, even the business trips, all carefully planned to keep Eric close but not too close. But why? What was so dangerous that it required this elaborate dance of proximity and distance? Luna suddenly leaped from the couch and ran to the window, her tail puffed up. Outside, a car alarm started wailing. Eric approached the window cautiously. The dark sedan was back, but this time it wasn't alone. 2 men in suits were standing beside it, looking up at his apartment. As he watched, one of them spoke into a radio. His phone buzzed again. "Don't trust them. They're not who they claim to be. Watch the video now." Eric's hands were shaking as he opened his laptop. The email was still there, the video file waiting. But before he could click it, another email arrived, this one from his mother. The subject line made his blood run cold. "Don't watch the video." Below it was a single line of text. The leaf was a warning, not a clue. Eric looked at the wooden leaf in his hand, then turned it over. There, carved in tiny letters he never noticed before, was a message. "Some stories are better left unread." Outside, more cars were arriving. His phone was buzzing continuously now, messages flooding in from both numbers. Luna was hiding under the couch, her eyes wide with fear. The video file seemed to pulse on his screen, demanding attention. He had less than 2 hours to choose, watch it and learn the truth his father wanted him to know, or delete it and heed his mother's warning. But as he stared at the wooden leaf, a third possibility occurred to him. What if both his parents were lying? What if the real story wasn't about protection or reunion at all? The carved leaf felt heavier in his hand, like it was weighted with secrets. He held it up to the light, and for the first time, noticed something else. The wood wasn't solid. There was a seam running along the edge, almost invisible unless you knew to look for it. The leaf wasn't just a clue or a warning. It was a key. The wooden leaf split open in Eric's hands with a soft click, revealing a small USB drive nestled inside. His heart pounded as he stared at it, wondering how many times he'd played with this treasure as a child, never knowing it contained something his father had hidden for him to find. A sharp knock at his door made him jump. Luna darted into the bedroom as Eric quickly pocketed the USB drive. "Mr. Thompson?" A man's voice, official sounding. "Federal agents. We need to speak with you." Eric's phone buzzed again. His mother's number this time. "Go out the fire escape. Now. But before he could move, another message came through from the Portland number. His father. Don't run. They're not real agents. Look at their shoes. Eric crept to the door and peered through the peephole. Two men in dark suits stood outside, looking every bit like federal agents from a movie. But their shoes. One wore scuffed combat boots poorly hidden under suit pants. The other wore expensive Italian loafers, definitely not standard government issue. His phone buzzed again. His mother. I'm 5 minutes away. Stall them. Eric took a deep breath and called out. Can I see some identification? Of course. The first man replied smoothly. If you'll just open the door. Slide them under. Eric interrupted. I've had a lot of people lying to me lately. Hope you understand. A pause. Then the second man spoke, his voice harder. Mr. Thompson, this is about your father. We know he's contacted you. We're here to help. Help who? Eric wondered. He glanced at his laptop, the video still waiting to be played. 1 hour until midnight. A small envelope slid under his door. Inside were 2 FBI badges that looked perfectly real. Too real, like they were trying too hard to be authentic. His phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Check the badge numbers against the database. Password New Leaf New Life. Eric's hands shook as he pulled up the FBI database login page. It shouldn't have been possible for him to access this, and yet the password worked. The badge numbers came back with a glaring red warning, compromised credentials. Everything seem in order? One of the men called through the door, impatience creeping into his voice. Almost, Eric replied, mind racing. Just need to make a quick call to verify the office number. There's no time for that. The first man snapped, dropping all pretense of politeness. Your father has stolen something very dangerous. If you've had any contact with him, you need to tell us now. A metal scraping sound came from Eric's bedroom, the fire escape window opening. His heart leaped, thinking Luna had somehow managed it, but then he heard footsteps. Multiple sets. They were coming in from both sides. His phone buzzed one final time. His father. Use the leaf. It's not just a drive. Remember the marble. The blue marble from his treasure box. Eric had always wondered why it felt heavier than it should. The pounding on his front door grew louder as Eric sprinted to his bedroom, snatching up the marble from the box. He could hear voices on the fire escape getting closer. In desperation, he smashed the marble against his desk. It cracked open, revealing a small key with a familiar leaf pattern. The USB drive had a matching keyhole on its side. Footsteps in his living room now, they'd broken through the front door. Eric's hands shook as he joined the key and drive together, not knowing what to expect. A high-pitched sound filled the air, and suddenly every electronic device in his apartment went dead. His phone, his laptop, even the lights, everything switched off at once. Then came the sound of bodies hitting the floor. Eric? A woman's voice called from the darkness. Baby, are you okay? Mom? He could barely make out her figure in the doorway, wearing what looked like tactical gear. The emergency lights from the building's hallway flickered on, casting a dim glow over the scene. The fake agents lay unconscious on his floor. Behind his mother stood 2 other figures, one he recognized from the photograph, now 20 years older but unmistakable. Dad? Before anyone could move, Luna emerged from under the bed and walked calmly to the third figure, rubbing against their legs like they were old friends. Hello, Eric, the third person said softly. I believe you know my cat. Eric stared in shock. Your cat? Luna was. Insurance. His mother cut in. A way to keep eyes on you when we couldn't. Sarah here has been her real owner all along, training her to watch for signs of danger, to alert us if anyone came looking for you. Looking for me? Why would anyone? Because of what I found. His father interrupted, stepping forward. What I hid in that USB drive 20 years ago. Evidence of a program so classified that people are still killing to keep it secret. A program you helped create, Eric's mother added bitterly. Before you grew a conscience. I didn't know what they were really doing with my research," his father protested. "As soon as I discovered the truth, I gathered every piece of evidence I could and ran. But they were too powerful to fight directly. We needed a long game." "So you used me?" Eric's voice cracked. "Made my whole life into some elaborate protection scheme?" "No, son." His father's eyes were full of tears. "Everything I did was to give you choices, real choices, not the forced ones they gave me. The scholarship, the job opportunities, those were to help you build a life they couldn't control." "The video?" Eric asked. "A trap," Sarah explained, scratching Luna behind the ears. "They wanted you to open it so they could trace the drive's location. These men weren't here to arrest you, they were here to make you and that drive disappear." Eric looked around his apartment, at the unconscious men, at Luna purring contentedly, at his parents standing together for the first time in his adult life. "What was on the drive?" he finally asked. His father smiled sadly. "The truth about Project Wonderland. About how they're using advertising technology to do more than sell products, they're selling reality itself. Rewriting history, one consumer at a time." "Why do you think you're so good at your job, honey?" his mother asked gently. "Why your campaigns always seem to know exactly what people want to hear." Eric thought about his successful career, about how easily he could predict consumer behavior, about the patterns he saw that others missed. "I'm like you," he whispered to his father. "I can see the code behind people's choices." "Yes," his father nodded. "But you use it to sell cars and soft drinks. They use it to sell wars and rewrite memories. To make people forget things that really happened and remember things that never did." "Like a father's death?" Eric asked quietly. "Exactly," Sarah confirmed. "Your mother's lie was better than their truth. Better than letting them use you like they used your father." A siren wailed in the distance, getting closer. "We need to move," Sarah announced. "They'll have backup coming." "Coming where?" Eric asked. His mother held out her hand. "That's up to you, baby. You can come with us, learn the whole truth, help us fight back. Or you can stay, forget this happened, let them rewrite this night into something more believable. Real choice this time," his father added. "No manipulation, no hidden agenda. Just the truth, as dangerous as it is." Luna meowed and walked to the door, looking back at Eric expectantly. In the distance, more sirens joined the first. Time was running out. Eric looked at the USB drive in his hand, at the unconscious men on his floor, at the family he never knew he had. 27 years of lies and half-truths, all leading to this moment of choice. Real choice. The sirens grew louder. The sirens were getting closer, their wails echoing off the buildings like banshees in the night. Eric looked at Luna, still waiting expectantly by the door, then at the USB drive in his hand. 27 years of lies, manipulation, and hidden truths concentrated in one small device. "How do I know this isn't just another manipulation?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "How do I know you're not all just selling me another reality?" His father stepped forward, then stopped, respecting the distance between them. "Because for the first time, we're giving you something they never would doubt." "He's right," Sarah added, checking her watch. "The program never allows for uncertainty. Their realities are always crystal clear, perfectly explained. Truth is Messier." A helicopter's rhythmic thrum joined the approaching sirens. They were running out of time. "I need to know one thing," Eric said, turning to his mother. "That Thanksgiving fight, was that real? Or was that part of all this too?" His mother's eyes filled with tears. "That was real. I saw you getting closer to the truth with that Vancouver client, and I panicked. Pushed you away because I thought distance would keep you safe. It was the worst mistake of my life." "Worse than lying about Dad?" "No," she replied quietly. "That was the worst choice. But it wasn't a mistake. I'd do it again to protect you." The first police car pulled up outside the building. Red and blue lights started strobing through the windows. "Eric," his father said urgently, "I know you have no reason to trust me, But you need to decide now. Whatever you choose, destroy that drive. It's too dangerous to exist. Eric looked down at the drive, then at Luna, who had moved to sit beside Sarah. Everything he thought he knew about his life had been turned upside down, even his relationship with his cat. But something his father said earlier stuck with him. He could see the code behind people's choices. And right now, looking at the three people before him, he could see something he never noticed in his advertising work: genuine fear. Not for themselves, but for him. The sound of boots on stairs echoed up from below. Eric made his decision. He walked to his desk and picked up his treasured Mont Blanc pen, a college graduation gift from his mother. With practiced fingers, he unscrewed the cap, then the barrel, revealing a hollow chamber inside. "Mom," he said, not looking up, "remember when you gave me this? You said a good advertiser always needs a backup plan." His mother's breath caught. "You knew?" "Not then," Eric replied, sliding the USB drive into the pen and reassembling it. "But I've spent my whole career studying how people hide messages in plain sight. Like mother, like son." Moving quickly now, he grabbed his laptop bag and stuffed it with essentials. The footsteps were getting closer, maybe 2 floors away. "Sarah," he said, "Luna really is a trained surveillance cat, right? Not just a normal stray." Sarah smiled. "Best in her class." "Why?" Eric grabbed his phone and pulled up his banking app. "Because I just made a very large donation to a local cat shelter. If anyone checks my background, they'll see a pattern of cat-loving behavior." His father finished, pride in his voice. "Making your connection to Luna look completely natural." "Exactly." Eric pocketed the pen. "I learned from the best, didn't I? Both of you." The footsteps reached their floor. "Time to go," Sarah announced, moving to the fire escape. "Wait," Eric said. He walked to his wall of evidence, the timeline of his life, and pulled down his father's fake death certificate. Removing the backing, he revealed another document hidden behind it. His mother gasped. "Is that my real backup plan?" Eric said, handing the document to his father. "I found some inconsistencies in Project Wonderland's advertising patterns 6 months ago. Started my own investigation. Turns out I wasn't the only one in advertising who noticed something wrong." His father scanned the document, eyes widening. "These signatures, these are from board members of major advertising firms. They're all willing to testify? They're waiting for the right moment. The right story to tell." Eric smiled grimly. "I might have gotten more than just pattern recognition from you, Dad. I got your conscience too." A pounding on the door started. "Federal agents! Open up!" Luna darted to the fire escape, leading the way. Sarah followed, then Eric's mother, pausing only to squeeze his hand. His father went last, turning back one final time. "Son, Save it!" Eric cut him off. "We've got a long drive to Portland. Plenty of time to talk." They emerged onto the fire escape just as Eric's apartment door burst open. Moving silently, they descended into the darkness of the alley below. The helicopter's searchlight passed overhead, but they were already in Sarah's unmarked van, pulling away from the curb. As they drove through the night, Eric sat in the back, Luna purring in his lap. He watched his father and mother in the middle seats, both stealing glances at him when they thought he wasn't looking. Sarah focused on driving, taking a complicated route to lose any tails. "So," he finally said, breaking the silence, "tell me about this bookstore in Portland. I assume it's more than just a bookstore?" His father turned, smiling slightly. "What gave it away?" "The name, New Leaf. It's what advertisers call a pattern interrupt. Makes people pause, think differently. Perfect cover for a resistance headquarters. Always knew you'd figure it out eventually," his mother said softly. "You see patterns even I miss. That's what scares them," Sarah added from the driver's seat. "Not just what's on that drive, but what you can do with the information. You don't just understand the code, you know how to rewrite it." Eric pulled out his pen, feeling the weight of the drive hidden inside. Then let's give them something real to be scared of. A story even they can't rewrite. Luna stretched in his lap and yawned, seemingly unconcerned with matters of global conspiracy. Eric scratched her ears, appreciating her act of normalcy even if it was just that, an act. The city lights faded behind them as they headed north toward Portland. Toward truth, or at least a version of it. Toward a future built on exposed lies rather than comfortable fiction. Eric looked at his reflection in the window, seeing his father's eyes looking back at him. For the first time, he welcomed the resemblance. They were both pattern breakers, truth seekers, story changers. And they had one hell of a story to tell. "Dad," he said, watching the darkness pass outside, "tell me about Project Wonderland. Tell me everything. No more lies, no more protection, no more half-truths." His father nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. "It started 28 years ago, with a simple question: what if you could make people believe anything?" As they drove through the night toward whatever future awaited them, Eric listened to the story of how reality itself became a product to be sold. And somewhere in the darkness behind them, the old version of his life, the comfortable lies, the simple explanations, the fake memories, faded away like a dream at dawn. Sometimes, he realized, the truth isn't about what you find. It's about what you choose to believe. Luna purred in agreement, guardian and conspirator both, as the night wrapped around them like a blanket of secrets, finally ready to be told.